Welcome back to the Beanbag. Today I'm going to be looking at the Star Trek figures based on the uniform that was seen first originally in Star Trek First Contact and the later Next Generation films, as well as the last 3.5 seasons of Deep Space Nine. You might know that towards the end of the Playmates run in 98, 97, 98, they did finally put out, maybe it was 99, this little wave. It only came out in Target, which is actually one of the things that made it a bit of an issue of getting a hold of some of the figures. And some of the figures were only released in Europe internationally, and they never even made it to the United States. I do have one of those. But what they did is they took and they sort of repurposed the Voyager bodied figures, which is, you can always tell those because of the legs that pivot at the thigh. And they managed to make the little ribbing on the shoulders in order to make the Next Generation crew. And so they made, first it was Picard, which of course this is just a, they made these generic bodies and did the head swaps on them, which they look great. And the figure looks fantastic. Funny enough, they had actually, and I think I should have that here somewhere, maybe not. The Captain Calhoun from the Star Trek New Frontiers books, they had done a couple of years earlier, and it was literally just a repaint of a Deep Space Nine style uniform. Voyager style uniform, where they just painted the shoulders gray. They didn't have the ribbing, which you can actually, maybe you can kind of hear. It's actually a physical ribbing on there instead of just painted on, which is something that a lot of fans have taken to doing. You'll see a few of those that I've done like that. Then they did Riker, which, like I said, it's the exact same body, which, of course, the unfortunate thing about that is it makes Riker the exact same height as Picard, despite the fact that Jonathan Frakes is probably about 4 inches, 5 inches taller than Patrick Stewart, but still looks good. The head sculpts on these are actually really good. Got a little something there. Of course, if you want this to be more like the Star Trek Nemesis, you'd want to add a little bit of gray to the temples there, because by then he did start getting a touch of gray in his hair. There's the Counselor Troy, which for some reason this has been debated by a lot of people, because we know that it's essentially just a head swap, that they took the Janeway body, added the shoulder ribbing, and then took a Star Trek Generations Troy head and put on there. But for some reason the neck on these, and you'll see it in a minute with the Dr. Crusher one as well, looks kind of short. It looks kind of squat. And I've never quite understood why that is. Like, did it need to be lengthened? Or is it maybe the shoulders are too squared? Could be. But other than that, still great figure. Then there's Data. Same body, painted with the gold. One of the things I always thought was interesting was that later in the line, is if you go back and look at the first Next Generation figures and Deep Space Nine figures, the pips were actually sculpted on and then painted with a little teeny drop of gold and black or whatever. But then on these, starting with Voyager, they started just painting them on. And to be honest, I think I actually like the painted on pips better, rather than the sculpted on ones. The Worf was the Deep Space Nine uniformed Worf with the resculpted shoulders. Again, they textured them in order to match, but it's literally the exact same body from that one. They did not change, which it probably was a little too difficult to change the deals on his bandolier. And then this one is actually one of the harder ones to get, the Dr. Crusher. Because not very many of these got released in the United States. Plus, I think it was also that the Dr. Crusher had fewer made. It was an issue that same line they also made the Borg Queen, which when we get to the Borg episode, you'll see that I don't have, because that one is still incredibly hard to get a hold of. But yeah, the Dr. Crusher, as you see that for some reason I think it's that squaring of the shoulders. It makes the neck look kind of squatty. Now this is one of the first customs of this one. They never made a Geordie for some reason, and so I have had to custom make my own Geordie. I borrowed the Chief O'Brien rolled up sleeves to kind of give him the look that he had during Star Trek First Contact with the rolled up sleeves. The head's actually from All Good Things, that it's just repainted to cover up the gray, but to give him sort of the mustache look that he had from First Contact and the later movies. And then this is Captain Picard in the vest that we see him wearing. I don't know what that is. There we go. In Star Trek First Contact. If you might recall specifically from when he goes to fight the Borg, he takes off his uniform jacket and he's got this vest with the shirt underneath. And this is just a repaint of, well, it uses a few parts of, it's actually the Captain Scott arms with a leisure suit, leisure uniform, Picard redone to where it looks like the vest, so that way it still has the ribbing on there. And in that vein, I did the same thing for Captain Sisko, because on Deep Space Nine we did a couple of times see him wearing the vest uniform. If you follow meme culture or in much, you'll remember him wearing this uniform when he gives the speech about if he had to do it all over again, he would. Is that in the Pale Moonlight? It's a fake. Now, as far as some of the other Deep Space Nine figures that I've done, I've also made Dax. This is essentially just a repaint. I did redo the hair, because in the later seasons, Dax had a slightly more sort of bun kind of thing going on instead of the typical ponytail that she was wearing. And I don't think I mentioned this in my Deep Space Nine video. This is one of the things that I had an issue with of the Dax figure for a long time, is that the legs, for some reason, were never very stiff in there, and so it caused her to kind of become a gymnast. Was never super tight. But anyways, yeah, that's just a real basic repaint. I've got the same for... I did a Tuvok. Because Tuvok actually in the books, this is one of those things, this is one of the few more of a book character. Tuvok actually was the security and tactical officer on board the Titan for a while. And so this is one of the ones that I made that's actually based on that. And here we go. Here's Dr. Bashir. Again, simple repaint. I've done... This is Lieutenant Carey from Voyager that I put into one of these uniforms. But it's really supposed to be just more for a generic background character, so that I can, fill in my bridge set kind of thing, have extra characters. That's sort of the same thing with this Sisko that I did. It's the earlier version of Sisko, and I put him in a First Contact uniform. I had a spare, and so I decided I'd just do that repaint job and have that. This is one of my super customs. I did sculpt the Nog head by taking a mold of the little minifigure that they had made, and I increased the size of it and put it onto a Deep Space Nine body. You might be able to recognize some of the parts here. And what I actually did is the legs, I actually shortened them so that he would be a little bit shorter than most of the other figures, without being, you know, completely dwarfy compared to most of them. But still, everything works on it properly, joint-wise. And then this is another one I took and I made a Orion officer. I liked the idea of a big, tall Orion. He's actually quite tall when compared to the other figures. And I did actually, because I hand sculpted this one, this is actually ribbed the way that those other First Contact figures are. And then the last one I did was I made Admiral Ross from Deep Space Nine. The body is just a reuse of the Admiral Riker figure. I changed the comm badge on it and swapped out the head for a different head that I had sort of resculpted to look more like Admiral Ross. So that is it for the First Contact uniform figures. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.